Welcome to the Call Your Shot podcast, your weekly sports recap podcast where we break down the hottest headlines, dissect the latest injuries, and serve up our own hard-hitting analysis of the past week in sports. But that's not all. We're not just here to talk about the past, we're here to predict the future as well. On the Call Your Shot podcast, we boldly predict the outcomes of the upcoming week's games.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for listening. This is the Call Your Shot podcast with your hosts, Alex Harris and Drew Moore. Today's episode, we're going to be recapping the conference championship games and then, previewing a little bit of the Super Bowl. So it's going to be purely football this week, and we're getting more into basketball and some of the moves that have been happening in the NFL going on more so next week. So I guess getting started, Drew. We had Chiefs Ravens. Ultimately, the Chiefs do end up beating the Ravens 17-10. I think it went in a way that at least I didn't necessarily expect. The Chiefs kind of were able to operate and manage the game kind of how I envisioned the Ravens were going to if they were to win that game. Time of possession, taking control of the ball, not making mistakes. And it was the Ravens, actually, that ended up having a lot of key errors throughout the game. So overall, what were your thoughts on the game?
You pretty much summed it up right there. Is like, why did the Ravens not run the ball when that is literally their identity? Is we run the ball and we're damn good at it. And they completely went against that game plan. And this is the result. You end up losing. And this has been a kind of a common theme with teams around the league whenever they're playing against the Chiefs, is that teams just kind of freak out and they're like, oh, it's Patrick Mahomes, it's Andy Reid, oh my God, Travis Kelce,
God.
Literally start like freaking out and stuff. And they're like, okay, well, clearly everything that we tried before has not worked. And the game plan that they tried last week, it didn't work either. So we have to come up with something completely unique and out of the blue and random. That way they have no idea what's coming. And the problem with doing that is that your team has also never done it before. Instead of going with what you were doing the past, 19 weeks or so, 20 weeks, whatever it is. Instead of doing that, you just decide, actually, you know what? We made it this far. We've been blowing out teams with the way that we've been playing. No. We're going to do something else. We're going to catch them off guard and absolutely just play like dog water, score 7 points in the first half, barely even get a touchdown. Honestly, probably should have 2 touchdowns, worst rule in the game, but we're not going to get into that.
Yes, we are.
But okay, well, I guess we are, but just not yet. But yeah, there's no reason that, like, I just don't understand how Todd Monken can go into the game and see what the Bills were doing to them the week before, how many rushing yards they were able to get, and then come into this game, and then they're like, okay, you know what? Actually, we're only gonna run. I think it was like 6. They had 6 rushes in the first half. Like, that's not gonna be nearly enough if you're the Baltimore Ravens, especially with, I'm not calling him a pocket passer. He's not a pocket passer. He can actually be I'm not calling him not a pocket passer, because he can be a very good pocket passer in Lamar Jackson. But, games like this, the big games and stuff, where now people are going to be like, oh, he can't win a big game. It's going to be, tarnish on his legacy, all these things. But I don't know. I'm at a loss for words. I'm at a loss for words.
Yeah, it was very unfortunate. You mentioned it. They only had 16 rushes total, average 5 yards a carry, but only 81 yards. And I feel like 4 or 5 of those just ended up being Lamar scrambles out of the pressure. And it just seemed like the Chiefs, whether it be the mystique of Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce and Andy Reid, as you mentioned, or whether it be, the Ravens trying to look cute and trying to beat them at their own game, or whatever the case may be, ultimately just chose not to run the ball at all. And I don't know. People said coming into this game, one of the best things that you can do for Lamar Jackson is trying to get pressure on him, turn him to east-west sidelines, and trying to get him to throw on the run. And that's ultimately what the Chiefs were able to do. They only had 3 points in the first quarter. It was the worst loss that they've had all season. That's kind of crazy to say that they lost by 7, and it was the worst loss they've had by all season. The least amount of tied for the least amount of points that they've scored all season, similar to when they played the Steelers. But I think that the Chiefs just had a great game plan, and as we mentioned last week, I think that the Bills kind of gave you the formula to beat the Chiefs. It was just they made just a couple if you don't want to call them mistakes, just, they didn't capitalize on some of the situations. And I thought that with the Ravens defense, with Lamar Jackson and their weapons, I thought that if they were to follow that same type of script, along with, not making those mistakes, I thought that they would be able to win this game. And I figured that, I mentioned it last week. I didn't think that the Ravens needed to play perfect in order to win this game. I thought that they just needed to take care of the ball and play their game, and they did the exact opposite. And then you had the situations with Zay Flowers trying to, reach for a touchdown, fumbling, and then before that, you had the taunting penalty when you finally had a big play with Zay Flowers, kind of a 50-yard bomb, and then about 20 yards run after the catch, and then he flexes and gets called for a penalty, and all of these like little mistakes all boil up, and then you have Lamar when they finally do get something, throwing a pick in the end zone. So it was just a terrible series of events for the Ravens, and I think that it goes to show. I don't know. I don't want to say that. I think that you have to give respect and kudos to the Chiefs, but I really feel like it was like more of like the Ravens lost this game. Like it was never really close. I feel like the Chiefs were in full control throughout the entirety of the game, but I just feel like the Ravens didn't really come to play at all. It was just kind of it was just a weird game in my opinion. So
No, for real. And like going back to how the Chiefs kind of threw off the game plan, or quote unquote threw off the game plan of the Ravens, it was more so a factor of they literally just didn't do what they do best. Like, so that's where I'm still like, okay, how much of this is the Ravens actually losing the game or the Chiefs winning the game? So going back to week 9 and up until now, you look at EPA per rush, or EPA per play, in terms of rushes, go all the way down 17th for the Kansas City Chiefs. And then if you go over to EPA per dropback, number 8. I'm, like, keep it caveman simple. Last time I checked, 8th is better than 17th. And I would not want to do something that, they're 8th in, and you also do the least in, which is pass. You do the most of, which is run. And then you have a scrambling quarterback that you have no design runs for, which has been one of the biggest changes from the beginning of the year to the takeoff point, so to speak, of the Ravens, was having Lamar run more as well. And I'm more upset because I lost money than like, because I can't even really say that it was the wrong read, because in the second half they completely shut him down. Like that was the kind of defense that I was expecting to see from the Ravens the whole game. Maybe even just like the first half, goddamn. But like I don't know why the game plan was, okay, just let Travis Kelce get his, and we'll just figure it out from there. They were just sitting back in zone, and they were playing man on Travis Kelce, and that's never going to be a good option. But also, I don't understand why every single time you pan the camera over to Travis Kelce catching another pass, there is nobody near him within like 20 yards, except for the one catch, or the two catches that he had. Yeah, the touchdown that he had, and then the diving catch that he had, where Mahomes was just like, F it, he's over there somewhere. And then he's like, he'll just make a play for me. Besides those two plays, like, I swear to God, there was not even a person on the camera. Like, I don't get it. I
mean, like, I don't really give any. Well, I do a good for the first half, but I don't give too much fault for the Baltimore defense. I thought they played overall a solid game, especially coming off the struggle that they had in the first half, where the Chiefs were able to score 17 points. I feel like the Chiefs played perfectly scripted or operated first half, pretty much, besides basically the two holding penalties that they add towards the end of the first half, where they potentially could have scored a touchdown, but they ultimately had to settle for a field goal because of the holding penalties. Other than that, after the first half and the second half, the Ravens played great, I feel like, or played at least play solid. The Chiefs didn't have a point. They didn't have a field goal. They didn't have anything. But the Ravens offense, whether it be through what Harbaugh overall the game plan is, whether it be the offensive coordinator in Monken, or whether it be Lamar, like they just could not get things going at all. And they just kind of seemed stagnant, stuck in the mud. And it kind of just seemed like the moment was a little too big for them. And as you mentioned, they'd lost who they were and they lost their identity and what got them here. And, the Chiefs only ended up rushing for 8 more yards than the Ravens did, but they still had 32 carries and they were able to, they had 32 carries. They averaged 2.8 yards a carry, but they wanted to try to establish the run game. They wanted to try and win the time possession battle, which they did 38-22. And like everything, as I mentioned, that I thought the Ravens were going to do, the Chiefs were like, nah, which, is kudos to Chiefs, like, fully accepting that, we're not the high powered offense that we've been over the past few years, or even especially when Tyreek Hill was here, now that, Travis is a little older, even though, over this playoffs, he's looked great. It was kind of like a homage to him. He had over 100 yards. Taylor was there, had a touchdown. Taylor was there, had a touchdown, and he looks great as he, like, I think passed Jerry Rice for the most receptions in the postseason, or postseason. Yeah, I think it was most receptions in the postseason.
It was he got most receptions and also most touchdowns in the NFC or AFC champion, or actually I think just in a championship game in general.
Yeah, and to your point, like I don't know what their game plan was. They thought that Byron Murphy or whatever his name is was going to be able to match him up 1-on-1 because he hadn't given up a touchdown to a tight end all season, so they were going to do Hamilton, not Murphy.
Yeah.
But I mean, when you're kind of going against Patrick Mahomes and arguably the best tight end of all time, that formula doesn't always end up working out. But yeah, I just think the Ravens got stuck in the mud, and the moment seemed really big for them. And as we've mentioned before, this was the knock that many people had on Lamar Jackson. We thought we were past it. He's gonna come off his second MVP. He was able to, win against the Texans, who people thought that they had a very solid defense. And now you kind of go up against the Chiefs team that's been there, done that, has been in the Super Bowl now 4 times in the past 6 years. As kind of just what you run into again, MJ effect.
Mm-hmm. Oh my God, whatever. Yeah. And also another big thing too was the Chiefs' ability to keep drives alive on third down.
Yeah, they converted a lot.
It seemed like it didn't matter if it was second down, first down, third down, or whatever. It didn't, like, they were just like, okay, we're just gonna move the ball, matriculate it down the field, use time of possession like you were talking about, and it's third down. Oh, it might as well just be first down because we're just gonna convert this again and just keep on passing it to Travis Kelce. Oh, it's 4th and 1. Okay, give it to that crackhead over there, Isaiah Pacheco. That way he can get his fix, and then just keep on driving down the field. So I think that was another big thing too, because usually the Ravens are one of the best teams in terms of, 4th down, okay, shutting it down, or third down, shutting it down, not allowing there to be like 4th and short or anything like that, or 4th and manageable, and not giving teams options to be able to go for it on 4th down, or giving teams that wide of array of play options on 3rd down, because it's usually like 3rd and usually like more than 5 yards is where they kind of specialize in. So
my only question to you is, are you ready to fully give the Chiefs and my homeboy their respect? We talked about it. My homeboy being my homeboy, even with the lack of weapons, and shout out to MVS. Basically sealed the game on that touch, or on that pass when they needed a first down. Yeah, when they needed a conversion. I think that was on 3rd down too. I think it was like 3rd and 9.
Yeah.
And he basically iced the game out for them. It basically was a falling catch. I think he could have caught that and ran right into the end zone. He's like, I ain't dropping this, goddamn, I'm going to fall to the ground with it, whatever the case may be. But that, we've talked about it all season, that this is the best defense that Patrick Mahomes has ever played with. And as I mentioned last week, I didn't think that, the Ravens defense on paper was best at every category, and they're a great defense, but I thought that the Chiefs defense was at least comparable. And when you go to a situation like this, I don't know what else you can ask for the Chiefs. And now, as we know, they go up against the 49ers. So are you ready to give them the props?
I will say that I will not say that the handicap that I had on the Ravens was a bad handicap because it was a great handicap. We beat the closing line. We were on the I was on the right side of the game of what it should have played out as, and the line moved. The line moved in our favor, or again in my favor. We had the money line, but at the time the line was at -3.5. It moved all the way up to 5 at some books.
I told
So
you.
we were okay. we were clearly on the right side. Like they wouldn't just, oh well, I think that Patrick Mahomes deserves to have 5 points because like no, the books aren't dumb. Like they're not going to give out points like that. But apparently they are because Patrick Mahomes is a dog. Just whatever, So
Whenever it's my homeboy, I don't think. Also, it was getting a little out of hand because there was a lot of media shows and outlets that were saying like, no matter what the case, the Ravens had been this juggernaut team, had destroyed double-digit and playoff teams all year, and they're saying, but it's Patrick Mahomes, so he should never be a dog. I was
exactly.
like that was a little out of hand, but I don't think
Yeah.
that I don't. I ain't gonna bet against Patrick Mahomes. Sorry.
Yeah. So I mean, all that to say, I have learned my lesson. I the same thing happened with Tom Brady. Remember that was like a
Yeah.
couple years ago where
Yep.
where I was like, hey,
You're just not like
can't
goats,
keep
Drew.
getting
You're like,
well, no, it's like a spot where all the stats line up and the market or the market dynamics tell me that the smart money or the quote unquote professional bettors or whatever are on this side, and that's the right side to be on. Now, again, do they win 100% of the time? No, but they end up winning more often than not. And so that's one of those things where either next time if I think that the other side of Patrick Mahomes should win, I will just stay away from it as opposed to betting against it. Um, I I thought this time would be different,
Mm.
but apparently not. And it's not like like that's the thing too. It's not like the Ravens didn't have a chance to come back and win the game either. Like they had plenty of drives that or plenty of opportunities where they had the ball going down the field and they had a drive going, but then they just had a turnover, or they reached the ball out and then they fumble into the end zone. I still think that that's the dumbest rule.
I agree with you,
ever.
but it's the rule, and everybody knows it. Since, as
So
we
dumb.
mentioned, we literally just saw McCole Hardman do it the week before. So
Yeah.
I'm like, it's not like it was like a unknown type of thing. So and then again, as we mentioned with Zay Flowers flexing on and getting the penalty and everything. So it was just a terrible series of events for the Ravens, and it just seemed too big for them. But what do you, in your opinion, see from the Lamar Jackson side of things? Because he ends up finishing 20 of 37, so about 53% completion rate, 42.9 QBR, 75.5 rating. I mean, one touchdown, one interception, end up getting the strip fumble. That wasn't necessarily his fault because, we got beat off the line, ends up throwing the interception. But, I mean, do you think that, the playoff moments are too big for him, or you just think that, it's just perfect series of events
Well,
for the Chiefs?
I mean, I think it's a little bit of both because it's hard to say that all of this gets to Lamar Jackson when we saw him play a great game last week, right? Granted, it's the Texans or whatever,
Great first or great
okay,
second half.
yeah, but at the same time, look at the whole body of work and turned out looking pretty good. But then you see him when he plays against, I don't know if you want to say a better team or whatever. Then you see this kind of happen, and then it's like, oh well, they are who we thought they were. I don't know. I think I'm
Because it's
a Lamar
unfair, but it's
Jackson fan,
unavoidable.
so yeah. So like, I'm always going to be a believer in the talent of Lamar Jackson, and I'm always going to be like, well, it wasn't all of his fault. Well, this one kind of was his fault, but but
Him and Zay.
but
That's why. Him and Zay.
yeah. And the weirdest thing too was the fact that the Chiefs used the same game plan that the Texans used in terms of increasing the amount of times that they were blitzing Lamar Jackson. And
Mm-hmm.
if you look at what happened from last week, they had the perfect answer, and they resulted in a bunch of points and with them winning the game and going to this game. But this week, I'm not sure like what or why all of this changed, and all of a sudden they're just like, actually, we have no idea how to defend the blitz, so we're just gonna curl up and die essentially.
I think the Chiefs secondary, specifically their cornerbacks, are much better than the Texans. I don't think that's completely all of it, but I think that is a big part of it. And they have all pros on that side compared to the Texans. And as we mentioned, like with D'Amico Ryan, obviously the Texans were a great story this year, but now everybody's going to say, it was a rookie coach, rookie quarterback. You have to go against Patrick Mahomes, a seasoned veteran, best QB in the league. Andy Reid, one of the best coaches of our era, been there, done that. So now this is kind of where the rubber needs to meet the road. Get the pressure on Lamar, get 4 sacks, get 7 QB hits, get the strip fumble, and you're able to play good coverage with your cornerbacks even when you do pressure. It made it really tough on Lamar, and that's how you do 53% completion rate. They kind of have the perfect game plan for him against him.
Yeah,
They're just able to execute it better.
Yeah, and I don't know. I just feel like it's weird how I guess just how pressure works on some players, and that's why I'm just like, there's no way that he can go from MVP to like Kenny Pickett. You know what I mean? Like, like it just seems so wild and abstract, but
Which is weird though, because like
apparently,
if you take a deeper look, like because I was like looking more at the season in what they went 14-3, they lost to the Steelers twice, and both the Steelers games ended up being the exact same score of the Chiefs games, which ended up being 17-10. Obviously, in the last week it was week 18, so I don't remember if they were playing their starters or not because they had already secured the first. But
they weren't.
both
No.
games were 17-10. Same with the Chiefs, and obviously the Steelers are notorious for having a great defense and getting good pressure. So I just thought that was very interesting. But I mean, I think it's a completely different monster when you get to the postseason with the Chiefs, which is very frustrating. And even for an MVP and as great of a quarterback like Lamar, again, I'm kind of with you. This doesn't really change anything in my eyes for Lamar, other than like if you want to get to that point where you want to be. It's just he's about to be a 2-time MVP. It's crazy to say, but if you want to be mentioned in the upper echelon of quarterbacks, or along with Patrick Mahomes, this is the type of hurdle that you're going to have to get over. And he hasn't been able to beat Mahomes. Obviously, this was their first time playing in the postseason. The only quarterbacks that have is Tom Brady and Joe Burrow. So the fact that Joe Burrow, in a lot of people's eyes, is kind of looked at as arguably a better quarterback than Lamar, simply just because he's beaten Patrick Mahomes and he's gotten to a Super Bowl, compared to Lamar Jackson, who's been notorious as a great regular season quarterback, MVP, 2-time MVP, but isn't able to turn it up when he gets to the playoffs, as opposed to Joe Burrow, who seems to get better. It's kind of just a weird dynamic. Josh kind of just stays about what his level is, but we don't got to
Yeah.
talk about Josh too much no more.
Yeah, and another thing too is the turnover worthy plays that Lamar Jackson had in this last game compared to pretty much what he's done the whole entire season. So if you go to the first game that he played against Houston, which is where they first started blitzing the hell out of him, and they were like, "Oh shit, what the hell's going on?" That's when he had his most turnover worthy plays at 3. From after week 1, you go 1-1-1-1-1-1-0-1-0-2-0-1-2-1-0-0-1, and then conference championship 3. So the only 2 games where he had 3 turnover worthy plays was in the first game when he had his worst performance against the Texans when they blitzed the hell out of him, and then you go to this game where they blitzed the hell out of him again, and he has 3 turnover worthy plays, fumbles the ball, throws a pick, and honestly the pick was pretty bad too, but
Yeah, it was. So now from the Chiefs side of things, they again are in the Super Bowl for the 4th time in the past 6 years. dynasty, whatever you want to call it. Patrick Mahomes is 14-3 in the playoffs since he has come into the league. This is his sixth season now, and if you don't want to include Tom Brady, he's 14-1, and the one loss, as we mentioned, is to Joe Burrow, and he's undefeated after that. And they've made the conference championship every season, and they've made the Super Bowl basically every other, actually more than every other season. So now it'll be a Super Bowl rematch, 2020. Chiefs 49ers, as the 49ers were able to pull off the miraculous second half comeback against the Detroit Lions. Very unfortunate. A lot of Lions fans out there, and I was kind of pulling for the Lions as well. They were up 24-7 going into halftime. And then that was the worst third quarter I've ever seen in my life. So I'll let you go first, Drew. What are your thoughts on the overall on the game? And how do you feel about the 49ers going forward?
I am still terrified of the 49ers in terms of terrified. I don't know what to expect is what I mean by that. Because on one hand, we saw the 49ers where some people who are very respected in the betting world were, and also some bookmakers too, were saying that the 49ers should be at least 5-point favorites against anybody on a neutral. This was like at the beginning or in the middle of the season when they were on that tear, blowing out people. Mm-hmm. And, you know, obviously since then, you clearly have to readjust those power ratings because they've been kind of on a downtrend for a while now. And then you have the Kansas City Chiefs coming in who are like blazing hot and trending upwards, literally. And so it was really a tale of two halves here. And Kittle even said it had us in the first half. I'm not gonna lie. But the thing that is bizarre is quite the opposite of what the Ravens were doing, which was they ran the hell out of the ball when they should not have been running the hell out of the ball because, like I had mentioned last week, the second team in the NFL over the last 9 weeks of the NFL season in terms of rush EPA was the Detroit Lions. You cannot run on that team and expect to win if you're not passing the ball. Now, that is one of those teams that they stuck to their identity, which is great if it works, but clearly it was not working in the first half. And then the second half, they made some adjustments. They started slanging that thing like they usually do. And then Debo was getting loose, getting that yak, and looks like his shoulder is completely fine, or they just shot it up with a bunch of Toradol so you couldn't feel anything. Probably that, yeah. And so, you know, they come out of the second half, and you're talking about you were driving home, and all of a sudden you saw that the score was tied up, and then they took the lead. So
I was pissed.
And that's really how fast it happened. Like they went in at halftime, and you blink twice, and all of a sudden now it's they're winning by 3. Like, how does that happen? And it was a lot of, I don't want to call them fluke plays, but a lot of bad things happened right after the other, and it was just a bad series of events essentially.
Yeah, the Lions, you want to talk about control. The Lions were dominating in the first half, and the 49ers couldn't really do anything other than the one touchdown they did end up getting. Started off with a missed field goal, and the Lions basically capitalized on every single drive they had. They had one punt in the first half. Everything else was touchdown, field goal, going 24-7, and you think that, like, this is basically over. So not only were the 49ers able to walk them down, they did it in a quarter. And as you mentioned, it was a little fluky, you could say. They kind of had the Brandon Ayuk tip pass that probably could have potentially been picked, or at the worst probably should have just been an incomplete pass. Ends up tipping it to himself and getting the touchdown. Ended up having Jahmyr Gibbs unfortunately fumble in the most inopportune time possible. And then they started getting to Jared Goff and the pressure, and not only the pressure from the 49ers defensive line, but I think the pressure of the overall game and the stakes when you kind of see what's happening as the 49ers are just gaining more momentum and more confidence confidence. And once that defense, about midway through the third quarter, started to click on all cylinders, it all started going downhill for the Lions. And then ultimately, you have Dan Campbell, who's been a very aggressive coach when it comes to, fourth downs and going for it. And he went for it every single time. I think there was 3 times. The first time he ended up getting it, but basically once the 49ers started.
There was one time when he didn't. That was I think
Oh
it
yeah,
was to go into the half.
He took his 3 once. I know it was in the first half.
Yeah.
But both times in the second half, once the 49ers started to walk them down, I mean, I guess hindsight's always 2020, but I'm on the mindset of, if we're rattled right now and this team is cooking on the opposite end, I'm going to take some points and not try to basically, piss away this opportunity. And if you would have told me that the Lions were up 24-7 at halftime over the 49ers, and Brock Purdy, who had already thrown an interception and again looked rattled, similarly to how they looked against the Packers, and then they were able to walk them down again. So I mean, it's a weird situation, because 49ers were another juggernaut team, especially in the NFC, that everybody thought, first half of the season were basically unstoppable. Then they go through the 0-3 lull, and Brock Purdy falls off of the MVP conversation and all this kind of stuff. And they get stuff clicking, and then they look like borderline trash against the Packers, but they're able to salvage the victory, and they're able to come from behind in the 0-30 in the fourth quarter type thing. So they're able to do that. And now they're able to do this. So even though the 49ers, I don't think, have been playing as good or as consistently as the Chiefs have over these past few weeks, I think the fact that they've been able to go through this amount of adversity and still find a way to come back is giving them a lot of confidence. And Brock Purdy, actually used his legs way more than I thought he was capable of, and was able to, get out of some really tough situations. I believe he had a third down run that they ended up converting on a big rush, and he had a couple actually. And he showed me a lot of things that I wasn't necessarily expecting from him. And then Christian McCaffrey doing what Christian McCaffrey does, and as you mentioned, Debo, George Kittle, and Brandon Ayuk being the great players that they have. So I think that it's going to be a good matchup. I think it's going to be a fun game. I just think that the 49ers have been very, I don't know, I don't want to say fortunate, because they came from behind against the Packers and the Lions in both situations, but they've had a couple things going their way, a couple tips, a couple passes, a couple fumbles, and they're here. And I think that, as you mentioned, I think we both talked about it, I think that the 49ers Chiefs are probably going to be a better matchup. I personally think that the Chiefs would have destroyed the Lions, especially coming off of the week 1 situation where they lost, and obviously lost by 1 without Travis Kelce and without Chris Jones. I feel that given Andy Reid and his coaching staff 2 weeks, and Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce playing with a chip on their shoulder in that situation, would have been bad news for the Lions. And if you're a Lions fan, I'm sorry. Wait all this time, I'm getting to the conference championship since like the 90s, whatever, never been to the Super Bowl, and you're one half away, up 3 possessions on a reeling team, and this is what happens. So very, very unfortunate. And again, now we have the 2020 rematch, and instead of Jimmy Garoppolo, we got Brock Purdy.
Yep. And it was interesting to see, like, well, I'm going to go 2 ways with this, actually. First thing was, putting my tinfoil hat on, and there were some people that were like, as soon as Eminem, I guess, gave the San Fran fans the double bird, that is when the onslaught started happening. So there's that. But then also another angle of this too is the defense finally caught up to the Detroit Lions, and this was the angle that I was trying to take with the Buccaneers, and with pretty much every single game that that the Detroit Lions played in towards the back half of the season, because again, I couldn't get that Nick Mullins game out of my head, and I personally took all kinds of Brock Purdy props to go over on passing. And what does he do? Instead, he goes over on all of his rushing props, which is very great and totally expected, seeing as how the Detroit Lions are 31st in dropback per EPA per play. That just makes sense. And then second when it comes to the EPA per play on the rush. So whatever, I digress. But when it comes to Brock Purdy's play as a whole, I do think that he is a lot better than the way he's been playing over the past few weeks because it has been quite bad. And I thought it was just, I mean, I think it also is, a little bit of the rain situation or whatever too, because apparently there was a game when he was playing at was it Iowa State or whatever it is, where he had Iowa State. Um, they had one rain game the whole time he was there, and that was the worst game that he played his entire career at Iowa State. And then you see that being displayed last week, and then um, against the I can't think of their names. Team before, can't think of
Packers.
it. Packers. There was another team too in there. Can't think of what it was. But Cleveland. There we go. Against Cleveland as well. Worst two performances of the year in the rain. Coincidence? I think not. And then you go to a team that has one of the worst secondaries in the league, can't tackle worth a damn, and they're also playing sunny and 75 Santa Clara, and then all of a sudden Brock Purdy just doesn't know how to play quarterback, and
Early
he only
pick.
throws for only throws for 267 yards after every quarterback from, I believe it was like week 16 on, had thrown for 350 yards against the Detroit Lions. So,
Mm-hmm.
and that's one thing that I am scared for in this next matchup against the Kansas City Chiefs, because the Chiefs ain't no pushovers in the secondary. The Chiefs aren't going
Mm-hmm.
to let you get back in the game if you're down, screwing around, doing whatever it is that you're trying to do. And sure, Green Bay, they let them get back in the game, win the game. Detroit, let them get back in the game, win the game. That's not going to work if you're playing against Kansas City Chiefs. And it sure as hell is not going to work if you're trying to pass the ball and try and running the ball through, or trying to play through Brock Purdy's arm, as opposed to trying to play with your strength, which is Christian McCaffrey, which could actually work against the Chiefs, which the Ravens didn't do. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think that going back to like playing perfect and stuff like that, I think the Lions played almost as good as they could, at least offensively. Rushed for 180 yards, had nearly 300 yards passing, got everybody involved, whether it be Laporta or whether it be Gibbs, whether it be Amon-Ra. But I think that a lot of it boils down to the calls that Dan Campbell had when it came to the red zone and these fourth down conversions. And I don't knock him for that, because like, you do what got you here, and he didn't change, no matter the situation and stuff like that. But hindsight's always 2020. But looking back and having potential 9 or 6 points on the board with that, but the defense overall just let them down to a degree, which is very unfortunate. The 49ers, even though their defense, they have a lot of pieces defensively, they have a lot of all pros, but they've been able to get beat a lot. But in certain situations, they've had a lot of bend but don't break moments, whether it be needing to stop against the Packers to go on the game-winning drive, whether it be the 2 fourth downs where they had to get a stop, where the Lions were like 4th and 1 or 4th and 2, and they're able to get a stop. So I
Mm-hmm.
think that against the Chiefs, again, I think these defenses are comparable. I think that the Chiefs defense and the 49ers defenses are comparable. I think that the 49ers have better offensive weapons, especially with their receiving weapons and Christian McCaffrey. But I think, in my opinion, it's going to boil down to the quarterback, and I'm going to trust Patrick Mahomes over Brock Purdy, who I think is a good resemblance, obviously, of what the 49ers are, because going back to 2020, I think that Jimmy Garoppolo was much, much more of a game manager than what Brock Purdy is. I think at times Brock Purdy is a game manager just because that's all they really need him to be. But I think that he's shown throughout the season, and especially in these playoffs when he's needed to come from behind, that he has the ability to actually go out there and win you games, I guess you could say.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that he's better than Jimmy Garoppolo, but it's going to be a
Yeah.
good game.
Yeah, definitely. And one last thing on your boy Dan Campbell. Like, he's definitely one of those guys that is not leaving the poker table with all of his chips or with any chips left. He's
Yeah,
he's going all in every single
literally.
time he's out there. Doesn't matter if he's up like $1 million. Nope, put it all in, all on red. So And this is what happens. And, you know, respect to him for sticking to his guns. Like ultimately they were, I believe, like 53% or something crazy like that on fourth down. So
Mhm.
like statistically speaking, he should have at least made one of them. And honestly, they should have converted on a couple of those if Reynolds caught the ball. He dropped
Yeah.
the easy pass, hit him right in the hands, and then the other pass that Reynolds dropped was on the next drive, and that was on third down, and that gave them another fourth down. So they wouldn't even had to be in that position to convert the fourth down. But again, you know, it's not just one player, one play or anything like that, unless you're Kadarius Toney, who was injured.
Yep.
Um, but but
People
yeah,
try to play
so
me. I ain't hurt.
you know,
Yeah,
literally.
no, I agree with you. I think that it was those calls, and as you mentioned, Reynolds had that big drop. That would have been a big gain. Could have been a big yak moment. And then
Mhm.
obviously you had Jameer Gibbs, which the unfortunate fumble, and then it just started to give the 49ers the confidence and momentum going towards winning that game. So it's kind of weird because, like, if you look, it's like in those moments define winning a game going to the Super Bowl or not, because they kept Jared Goff relatively clean. Only Jared Goff was sacked twice, only had 5 QB hits, so they kept him relatively clean. Didn't have any interceptions from Jared Goff, even though he missed on a few times during the second half because he was getting the pressure and it was kind of rattling him a bit. He didn't turn the ball over, but you did have the one turnover with Jameer Gibbs, and then you had the drop and, not being able to convert on fourth down. And as we mentioned, that's all it takes to lose to the Chiefs in this situation. That's all it takes for you to be going home as opposed to be going to the Super Bowl. So, moving
Mhm.
on, Super Bowl preview. Do you think that the Chiefs are going to be the first back-to-back champions in, I think, since the Brady and the yeah, I think since Tom
Yeah,
Brady?
it's Brady.
Or do you think the 49ers are finally going to get over the hump over the past 5-6 years? They've been a juggernaut within the NFC for a long time. They just haven't been able to get over the hump, and now it's personal with Patrick Mahomes because this is the rematch. So, who you got?
So this is going to be a very disappointing take, um, because honestly, I have no effing clue. Like I'm looking at each one of these teams. You know, when it comes to uh, success rate in terms of defensive success rate, you look down and you find the 49ers, who are basically near the bottom of the league in success rate. So they're 19th. And you look up at the top and you see the Chiefs, who are fifth. But then if you go deeper and look at EPA per play when it comes to drop back, they're right next to each other. Chiefs are eighth, 49ers are ninth. And then you go over to rushing when it comes to EPA per play. Chiefs are 17th, 49ers are 22nd. And so they almost mirror each other, and except for the success rate portion of it. And my my stats and analytics tell me that the 49ers can take advantage of this matchup more so than the Chiefs can take advantage of the matchup the matchup advantage that they have against the 49ers, because the 49ers are one of the top teams when it comes to rushing the ball. The Kansas City Chiefs very rarely ever run the ball. That is not who they are. They are a very pass happy team. And if they could have it their way, they would just pass it every down. And that's not going to work against the 49ers, except for they do have some fraudulent players in the secondary, though, to be honest. But they make up for it with their linebacking core. And so that's why this is tough. I want to pick the 49ers, but what they've shown this far in the playoffs is that they are very fortunate to even still be playing right now. And I know the same could be said with the Chiefs,
Cap.
but it's been stop it.
Cap.
Stop it.
Cap.
Make my eyes roll in the back of my head.
They won all
the
of these games.
I don't
The
No.
Bills is the closest thing because they dominated the Dolphins, even though it looked ugly because it was a low fucking temperature game.
Oh
They
yeah.
had the game against the Bills, and the Bills made mistakes, and the Chiefs capitalized. And then they basically took, even though the score was ugly, took complete control of a game against the best team from top to bottom all season, juggernaut with the MVP, the team that mollywopped the 49ers earlier in the season, and they made them look average.
You're okay, but you're telling me that the Chiefs were like it wasn't a close game and they almost had a chance to lose that game against the Bills?
No, I said like against the Bills. I think that was the closest situation, and I think that if the
Yeah.
Ravens would have followed that similar script, I
They
but
wouldn't be
I
here.
think that was a close game. I don't look back at the Bills Chiefs game and be like, oh, the Bills probably should have won that game. I think that they made
Well, yeah,
mistakes,
true.
but like I think that the 49ers honestly should have lost the last two games. And
Yeah, 100%. But I'm also
yeah,
saying that the Chiefs are fortunate to be here because that game could have gone either way towards the end of the game. And
yeah.
that's facts. They were just a like a
I mean, it
somebody,
was going to go
I
to
don't know,
overtime. That
God
doesn't mean they're
blowing
just
the
going to lose.
well, again, then we would have been able to see what
Then Josh
happens with
Allen would
these
have
new
had some
rules.
flashbacks, and then Patrick Mahomes would have been like, "All right, let me
Yep,
score again," and then they'd be like, "All right, we're gonna
legit.
get this stop here." But as one thing you did say,
Exactly.
I
And
do
then when
not
that
think
happens, anything can happen.
I do not think that this is the same Chiefs team. I don't. I think that they honestly have accepted the fact that they cannot air it out the way that they want to or the way that they normally do. They've leaned heavily on Pacheco this season, and obviously he's still dealing with his injuries. I think it's his toe injury. So they've
Yeah.
talked about him planting and having trouble with that every once in a while. But I think that they are much more balanced offense compared to recent times. And I think that that will have to be the formula against the 49ers because I don't think that you're just going to be able to pass all over them. But I think that Pacheco, obviously, he ain't C-Mac or anything like that, but he is a good enough running to, keep them honest. And I think that, if they're able to do that, able to keep having Travis be, 33-year-old Travis looking like the GOAT he is, along with, if Rashee Weiss comes to play or if MVS, we just need one other player to come to play. I think that they
We.
can. Yeah, I'm going with the Chiefs. I'm going with the Chiefs. I ain't trying to. Also, I'm a Seahawks fan, so you already know that I
Oh
hate the
my God.
49ers. So,
Yeah.
and I'm rolling with my homeboy, and I think
I
that
was confused. I thought you were French for a second. This
yeah,
man out here saying "oui oui."
we I a game like this, I think boils like if you want to look, I think the defenses are comparable. I honestly would give the nod to at least recently, I would give the nod to the Chiefs. I think the 49ers have given up like nearly 30
Agreed.
points over on average this entire playoffs. The Chiefs have never given up a 30-point game all season long. And everybody says that their defense is good. It's the best that Patrick Mahomes has played. But like when you actually look at it, like their defense is so much better, I feel, than people honestly have been giving them credit for. I think they're getting more, especially after the way that they were able to handle Lamar. But haven't given up 30 points all season to an opponent. Haven't given up 300 yards passing to any quarterback this season. And when it comes to all the stats that the Ravens were leading in, when it comes to takeaways or turnovers or whatever the case may be, the Chiefs are like right behind them in a lot of those categories. So I think that the Chiefs defense will be able to give Brock Purdy trouble. And if you do rattle Brock Purdy, we've seen it. He's prone. He will cough the ball up. Sometimes they resort or kind of go back to that 0-3 team. And it happened a few times during this playoffs, but they were able to get things clicking back because whether it be a young team like the Packers or whether it be an inexperienced playoff team, obviously other than Jared Goff, like the Lions, I don't think that you're going to have that same problem with the Chiefs. As you mentioned, if you make mistakes against Patrick Mahomes' team, they will capitalize. And if you let them get off to an early lead, I think that they have the ability with a balanced offense and with Pacheco to be able to take control of the game. Just like you said, the Ravens, best rushing team in the league, highest, I think, like differential when it came to time of possession, and the Chiefs dominated them. I think they can do a similar thing with 49ers, who I think are a lesser team than the Ravens. As you
Yep.
mentioned last week, the Super Bowl winners coming out of the AFC already. So
Yeah, I mean, and that is what I would believe in too. And my only thing, like I said, my only thing is the fact that the 49ers, their main thing is running the ball. and they are the best in the league at that, especially over the past 9 weeks.
I thought the Ravens were the
They've
best.
been No, they're the team that runs the ball the most. They're
Okay.
not the most efficient when it comes to rushing API per play.
Mm-hmm.
They're fourth.
Mm-hmm.
Um, San Fran, number one in the league when it comes to rushing EPA per play.
Mm-hmm.
And that scares me if I'm a Chiefs fan because they are, what was it, 17th or so? Let me see here. Yeah, 17th in the league when it comes to stopping the run.
Mm-hmm.
So and we saw how well that worked for the Buffalo Bills. The only problem with the Buffalo Bills is that they just had unfortunate turnovers at the worst times possible. And that's been the story of the Buffalo Bills situation. And they also didn't have any linebackers at all. So, and
I
I
think that
think
was the
that
Chiefs'
the
game
San
plan.
Francisco, well, yeah, but also I don't think that the 49ers are going to be lacking any middle linebackers or defensive ends or D linemen or any kind of major injury except for
Said Fred
Umfunga.
Warner and
On
Greenlaw have entered the chat.
Exactly. So I think that's a major factor that people aren't taking into consideration. And I was hoping to get a little bit more of an answer as to, is it the resurgence of the Chiefs or is it actually just opportunistic situations that they've been put in? And they showed last week that, okay, well, if you're just going to give me Travis Kelce wide open in the middle of the field, we're just going to keep on doing that and you can't do anything to stop it. And also, I'm Patrick Mahomes. So even if you guard Travis Kelce, I'm still just going to figure out a way to find an open receiver. And then, especially if MVS wants to start catching passes, it's over. Like you're not going to be able to, you're not going to be able to guard everybody. Um, but so there's that aspect on the 49ers side. But then again, you go back to the fact that the 49ers also struggle at stopping the run. And the Chiefs aren't nearly as good. They're 12th, but 12th is still pretty damn good. And we saw how well it worked for the Detroit Lions last week. Granted, they're third in the league, but still, I think that the Chiefs are going to have some pretty good success on the ground. So maybe I might attack this game on props as opposed to picking a side. Um, Even though I already have a future on the Chiefs, like if I had to lean any direction, I would lean that way because I'm tired of losing money to Patrick Mahomes. But and
It's
and
oh
ultimately,
gosh.
well, ultimately too, like if you go down the checklist and you're looking at like, okay, which quarterback would you want to go to war with? Patrick Mahomes. Which head coach would you give the advantage to on, say, just head coach? Okay, we're gonna give that to Andy Reid. Okay, what about for the offensive coordinator? Kansas City. Defensive coordinator, Kansas City. Like it's they're winning at the game plan. They're winning at the pivotal positions, except for obviously running back, and I guess technically wide receiver too, unless you count Travis Kelce as a wide receiver. We'll just call him a receiver instead.
Mm-hmm.
So like it's hard to go against them, and the line's moving in Kansas City's favor as well. I don't think that it'll get down to where the Kansas City is going to be favored in the game. From what I've
That's
been hearing,
ridiculous to me.
what?
After all of this and after the 49ers almost piss away a game, not even piss away, they almost lose a game outright to the Packers and they have to have a game-winning drive after they have to come back 17 points against the Lions, who again are a good team and it was a great story, but here we are. And what the Chiefs just did to the best team in the NFL, but the way that they beat them, it made it seem like, oh, now people are as if like, oh, the Ravens weren't that good. They're 14-3, and the NFL record for the most playoff team wins or the most like team wins against double-digit win teams. And now
How many points did
all
they
of
score in
that,
the second half?
huh?
How many points did they score in the second half? The
Who won
Chiefs.
the game?
Who controlled the second
How many?
half of
How
the
many?
game
How many? The
in
Chiefs.
terms of
Who won?
in terms of the defense?
The Ravens only scored 3 points in the second half.
I said in terms of the defense. The defense on for the Ravens absolutely shut them down. So, and that's been a thing though. Like the second half of games, the Chiefs have not been able to
This is true.
finish out games. So, like if the 49ers come out and they get ahead and they start getting a lead, again, we might see the opposite of what we're used to seeing, where the 49ers can't come back in the games. We might see the Kansas City Chiefs not being able to come back in games because we haven't really seen that all year. But granted, we haven't really seen their A game the whole year, but that might just be who they are.
Yeah, so I'm saying, like, if you want to, a lot of people are comparing the Chiefs. It's like, oh, I'm not sure if, we are at a point where we could just say the Chiefs are just clicking on all cylinders and they're the old Chiefs. I don't think you can say that because they're not the old Chiefs. They don't rely completely 100% on Patrick Mahomes to go out there and win these games like they have in the past and to basically just outscore teams, because they don't have to, because they actually have a good running game now, because they actually have a good defense. So when you do that and they have an ugly win against the Ravens where they're able to, I think that overall the Chiefs controlled that game against a juggernaut team. I think, in my opinion, that's more impressive than the 49ers coming back from behind against these teams, these good playoff teams, but I don't think that they're like Super Bowl champion type teams. Everybody was saying that the Ravens are a Super Bowl caliber championship type team. The way that the Michigan won in the NCAA, like, oh, that's a championship team. They've blown out teams. That's what a championship team looks like. The Ravens were a championship caliber team. I'm more impressed with a Chiefs victory and the way that they controlled that game, the way that they ultimately beat the Ravens at their own game, regardless of how the Ravens responded, whether they're like, we're like, oh, we're going to try to beat you at your own game, or we're just going to refuse to run, whatever the case may be. They still beat them, and I think they beat them convincingly. The 49ers had to come back from a 17-point deficit against a high-powered offense, not that great of a defense, and they ultimately ended up winning by 3. I think beating the Ravens is much more impressive. I repeat, the Ravens mollywop the 49ers.
And
4
I
turnovers for Brock Purdy.
I hear you. I hear you. All right.
And you
That's why
want
I
my
said I'm
homeboy's
staying
going to
away
open up
from
as a
this.
2-point dog? Are you kidding me?
I mean, well, okay, so like they put this line out because of the power ratings that they've had on the teams the whole season, and you can't take this small sample size as like at
Bulletin board material.
at face. Well, okay,
Mark it
but
right now.
but also, like I said before, in the middle of the season, like a lot of respected bettors and a lot of sports books were saying that they would have the 49ers. They were even saying they would have the 49ers as favorites against the Ravens if it was the same situation. So like that just kind of tells you where things are at with the sports books, and I'm just saying.
Yeah, but then the 49ers proceeded to go 0-3 and lost to the Vikings, the Bengals, and the Browns. Like, I don't.
Huh? I'm not saying that I think that they're gonna come out here and blitz
Who
them.
looked like the better team over the past?
Well, obviously, like I already said it. Like they're two teams trending in the opposite direction, but that's what scares me is that is that going to correct itself, or is this just going to be what it is, and the Chiefs are just gonna come in there, blow them out, and we're never gonna hear from the 49ers again? Like,
The only thing that does scare me, the only thing that does concern me is, you were able to score against the. It looked ugly against the Dolphins. It was a super cold game. Everybody thought obviously that advantage to the Chiefs, but they had to settle. I think they had like 4 field goals and like a couple touchdowns in that game. And then, you go against the Bills defense, as we mentioned, that was torn to shreds, especially from the linebacker and secondary perspective.
now you'll say it. Now you'll say
I said
it.
that. I said that. I said that last week.
Argument.
Let's
No,
watch.
you were
Let's
always
watch
like
back.
the defense. The defense was never the problem, Drew. It wasn't
No,
really
no,
the
no.
problem.
I
And
think that
all the
I think
injuries were overblown.
I think
That's what
that
you're saying.
I said, you go back to the last episode, I said that the Bills defense was decimated, but I'm saying that I don't think that was the problem, because even with that, the Bills were in opportunity to score or take advantage of the moment. And then you had Josh Allen missing throws, you had people dropping passes, and then you had McDermott not knowing what to do and trying to go for fake punts and stuff like that, and that loses the game to you by 3. As I mentioned, I think if the Ravens had the exact same game plan as the Bills did last week, that they would have won this game, but they didn't for whatever the reason. But I'm saying that the Dolphins defense I don't think was great. The Bills defense was just injured, so I'm not going to say that they were good. The Ravens defense was good. The Chiefs, as you mentioned, they scored 17 points in the first half, and they honestly were running up and down on the Ravens. And in the second half, as you mentioned, the Chiefs have been a very bad second half scoring team. So that is the one thing that does concern me.
28th in the league.
If the 49ers are able to get stops or early stops, and it boils down to a closer game. But I feel like it goes both ways, because I'm like, well, again, I don't think that the Chiefs have to rely 100% on Patrick Mahomes. But if you're going to have to rely on one quarterback at the end of the day, yeah, go ahead and give me the baby goat. I'll take him. You can't even call him the baby goat anymore. This is the 6th season, goddammit. He's been 4 Super Bowls, and he has a chance to go for 3 Super Bowls back-to-back champions. Like, if you want to, we can go back and forth all day about these teams and how comparable they are, who has the better defense, better coaching staff, better skill players, and stuff like that. Brock Purdy, Patrick Mahomes. I'm sorry. You're not going to tell me that Brock Purdy should be a favorite over Patrick Mahomes. I'm sorry. Lamar, I can understand. Not Brock Purdy. Not when Jared Goff outplayed him. Not when Jordan Love outplayed him. Like, I'm sorry.
Okay, I don't know. Well, I guess technically he did, but whatever. Anyways, if you adjust the metrics to start at week 15 and go through right now, the Kansas City Chiefs, 3rd in the league when it comes to EPA per play on the defensive end, which is kind of scary. And then you scroll all the way down and see that the San Francisco 49ers are 23rd.
People have been scoring on the 49ers.
I know, and that's where I'm like, how can it overcorrect that much? Like, obviously the Kansas City's been solid all year, but now drop back for EPA per play, Kansas City is 2nd when it comes to dropbacks, and the 49ers are 16th. And then you go to stopping the rush, the Kansas City Chiefs are 15th, and the 49ers are 28th. So,
yeah, I don't know what it's going on with the defense. I don't know.
Yeah, if you go, well, one of the things is that they're not adjusting anything at all. Like, Steve Wilkes is just like, no, this is how we've done it for, the last 18 weeks. This is how we're gonna do it for 18 more. Goddamn it!
This is how DeMeco did it. All right,
legit. And the problem is, they're not going to adjust anything unless they're forced to. Same thing with the offense. That's what they're having problems with too, is that they were being stubborn and were just like, no, it's Christian McCaffrey. Just keep on running the ball. Just keep on running it. And they weren't having much success. And then they would just end up stalling out on drives, because then it'd be like 3rd and 9. And then they'd be like, okay, well, we have no choice but to pass it. And then it's an incomplete pass on a terrible route by somebody, or somebody's just like blanket covered and there's nobody open, so Brock Purdy has to run, and he's slow as molasses. But apparently, unless I put a bet in on him to have over on his passing yards, then he runs for 50 plus yards. But again,
just don't bet on Brock Purdy. Just leave him alone.
I mean,
I think the 49ers are going to do more of do the smart thing, do what the Ravens should have done, do more of a Bills approach. I think they're going to try to lean heavily on McCaffrey. I think that they are going to do a lot of short intermediate passes to Brock Purdy, try to get him going, try to get his confidence up, whether it be screen plays to Debo, Chris McCaffrey, George Kittle, and things like that. And then you could try to blow the top off. I just don't think you're going to be able to do that against the Chiefs secondary. And I think that, if the 49ers are able to, methodically rush and do these short screen plays and basically work down the field for these touchdowns like the Bills were doing, and are able to consistently do it for the entirety of a game and not make mistakes, I mean, yeah, I guess that that's how you're going to beat Patrick Mahomes, and you're going to limit his possession. Same script that, the Eagles tried to have last season. But, obviously I would say that their offense was much more better and consistent the 49ers are, but we've seen it. Patrick Mahomes, albeit even in a weaker offense, I guess you could say, that he's previously had in the past, like, he does not need many possessions, or he does not need much time to capitalize. As we mentioned a couple weeks ago or last week against the Bills controlled that game. They gave him limited possessions, still put up 27.
Yeah. The one last thing from runningbacksdon'tmatter.com. It's still the funniest name of website. One last thing, looking at the offensive stats from that same time period from week 15 to now, guess who is number 1 in the league in EPA per play?
Isaiah Pacheco.
No. Team wise.
EPA per play?
Yep.
For probably the 49ers.
No, actually, the Green Bay Packers, which
Oh, there you
is
go.
super
Interesting.
gross to think about. But number 2 is the San Francisco 49ers. Number 3 is the Detroit Lions. And for some reason, the Seattle Seahawks are number 4, which makes
Yeah,
no sense, which means that these
yeah,
stats are already just flawed.
yeah.
That's what
But I
that
think
means.
it's when you have skill
But
positions and you have those,
okay.
you have. I don't know. It surprised me it's about the Packers because I understand.
I
I
mean,
don't know that
they turned it on at the end of the season there.
that is true.
And so I mean that makes sense, which is also probably why, they had this kind of performance against an elite defense in San Francisco 49ers. But anyways, when it comes to drop back EPA per play, you look at the 49ers who are 7th, and then you go down to the Kansas City Chiefs who are 13th. And then when it comes to the rush, number 1 in the league, 49ers. And then scroll all the way down to 29th, and you find the Kansas City Chiefs. So the weakest link of the 49ers is stopping the run. But again, the Chiefs' identity isn't to run the ball. The Chiefs' identity is to pass the ball as much as possible. And they're also not very good at running the ball either. And this is kind of my dilemma in trying to choose what team is going to win this game, because the Chiefs can take advantage of a downtrending secondary and defense that the 49ers have, but also the 49ers are the perfect matchup for the Kansas City Chiefs in terms of being able to run the ball a lot and also be successful at doing that too. So I don't know.
I have a question.
Because it's also Mahomes. It's also Andy Reid. It's also
It's also the
Spags as well
goat.
too on
Yeah,
on the defensive end.
don't even call him
So like
Mahomes anymore.
I okay okay okay. I,
It's
I
bad
that's why
to you,
I'm just
sir.
staying away.
Yep. Question:
Okay.
At what point in time do you stop calling a defense elite? Because we have obviously the 49ers, and they have so much star talent. Bosa and Warner and Greenlaw and Armstead and Chase Young and everything, but teams have been scoring all over them. But we're still
Yeah.
not hesitant at all to call the 49ers defense elite. But then obviously the Chiefs will do what they've been doing all season, and they've defensively again have done things that no other team this year has done. Even the Ravens, when it comes to holding teams below 30 points, comes to not having any 300-yard passers or whatever the case may be. And I think last week against the Bills, you're still arguing, he's like, oh, technically they're only ranked 9th in this certain category and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, you say that the Chiefs would have a better defense right now than the 49ers? Or no?
I think right now, yes, I would say that, but I think that that's also driven based on like recency bias as well too.
Also,
Um,
no 30-yard scoring teams or point scoring teams,
yeah.
no 300-yard passers. I can't say that about the
Well, see,
49ers.
that's the thing is like it's like when the Miami Heat first had LeBron and the Big Three and everything like that. Like they had this super juggernaut team, but then on paper they look like the best team and they look like they're never going to lose a game ever again. But then they ended up not winning the championship the first year. And I think that that's another thing that's happening too with the 49ers is that they have all these players, all this talent, and they just pretty much get whoever they want to put on defense. And on paper, it looks like they should just be unstoppable, or I guess you're not able to get by them because I guess that'd be another way for unstoppable. But anyways, I I don't know. I think at its current state, yeah, the Kansas City Chiefs, it's easy to say that they're the um better defense, but also I look at the the talent wise on the 49ers and I'm like, well, that defense looks a hell of a lot better than the Kansas City Chiefs defense. But then chemistry wise, the Chiefs are like leagues above what the 49ers have going on. And I think that's ultimately what is the deciding factor, because they have individual pieces that play their spots perfectly in order to complement and elevate the play of the other players around them, as opposed to being an individual that dominates a position. They have individuals who are very young who we don't even know how good that they're going to be,
Mhm.
and they're still getting better every day, and they're playing their role to perfection. That way, they know that their teammate in the secondary is going to have their back, and oh, if I play it a little bit differently, if I shade them a little bit more to the inside, you know, whoever Sneed does a better job at covering this particular part of the field if I do it that way. And knowing each other's tendencies like the back of their hand, I think is ultimately what makes them a better defense. But on paper, again, you look at the 49ers and you're like, God damn, that team is that they should never lose. But then now they're just like barely squeaking by and winning. So I'm like, I don't think that we've seen the best version of Kansas City's offense. And I also don't think that we've seen the best version of the 49ers defense either. Um, so yeah,
Unfortunately, I think that this has been the um, calling card for the 49ers. Going back to the Super Bowl in 2020, you have a 10-point lead going into the fourth quarter, and it looks like Patrick Mahomes and all of them are, have no can't do anything, and they miraculously come back. Obviously, that was with Tyreek Hill. Even going back to last year with the 49ers, who have a lot of similar players defensively, they had the situation with Brock Purdy, and he gets injured, and obviously, the offense wasn't able to score, and that could change a lot of the momentum when it comes to defense and things like that. But the Eagles were able to pass all over them. Go into this year, there's been a lot of teams, and even in this playoffs, that have taken advantage of the 49ers and their defense. And now you're just going to be like, okay, well, I'm just going to give a team that has I'm not going to say that the Chiefs is like far superior or whatever like that, even though I think I could argue that, or at least this season, not even this season, but I'll say that the defenses are comparable, but you're just going to give me the best quarterback in the league with the best tight end in the league with arguably the best coach. I think Andy Reid, and I think Shanahan is a great coach. So I'm not going to say that Andy Reid's a far superior coach and things like that. But I just think that the Chiefs just have. It's weird to say because it's a
I th-
rematch, but I just think
I
the Chiefs have
think
more
that
experience.
well, I think that Shanahan is a great coach for sure, but in terms of clock management and making
Yeah,
adjustments, he doesn't make really any adjustments. It's like this is the game plan, either it works or
he
it
gonna
doesn't.
yeah he gets stuck in the mud. He definitely gets stagnant, and sometimes he he does not know how to
And he
necessarily adjust.
and he's also like the complete opposite of Dan Campbell, and I don't know. I, I was gonna say some politics stuff, but he's very conservative, we'll say,
Mm-hmm.
and he just never takes any kinds of risks when like it's
What
fourth and
happens when
one.
you
I'll punt it. Like
I think now, like, with Christian McCaffrey, if it's like a 4th and 1 or something like that, or 4th and 2, I think they'll take more, be a little bit more aggressive. But in the past, like, I'm not going to take that big of a risk either if I have Jimmy Garoppolo as my QB under center. And now with Brock Purdy,
there,
who I would say is I don't know how
don't call him.
to
Don't call
I
him.
don't
Don't
no, no,
don't.
no, no, no. I don't know how to label Brock Purdy, because if you want the definition of a game manager, Jimmy Garoppolo was a game manager, and when it came to big moments, he crumbled and could not make the throws. Brock Purdy is not a game manager. He's better than that, but I don't know what to call him, because again, he's proven on this small sample size over these past 2 games. That was the biggest knock on him going in, and the biggest knock on Kyle Shanahan, being able to come from behind victories and being able to walk down somebody even if they get a big lead, because everybody was like, okay, the calling card for the 49ers is they can play great defense, they get out to these early leads because they're high powered offensive players and everything like that, and they just hold the lead. They can't come back from a deficit, and they've proven that in multiple situations over these past 2 weeks that they can. But like, do I trust Brock Purdy in a Super Bowl game in the fourth quarter if his team happens to be behind? Not really. Do I trust Patrick Mahomes in any situation or any case? Yeah, yeah.
You know who's number one in the league in success rate for quarterbacks?
No, I don't.
Brock Purdy.
Yeah, I'm not saying he's a bad. He
That is
was
true.
a top 5 MVP candidate, and you know who wasn't?
Yeah, you were over here touting him for MVP. You're like, he's gonna
Yeah,
win it, man. He's looking pretty
you're a
good.
number
So
guy. What I mean,
yeah,
yeah, and stuff like that. So like, I just want to, point out that I think Patrick Mahomes has beaten 3 of those players this postseason already that were like top 5 in MVP voting, whether it be Lamar, whether it be Purdy, and Josh Allen. So, last one, yeah, because that was the MVP finalists. It was Dak Prescott, Lamar Jackson, Brock Purdy, Josh Allen, and then I think Christian McCaffrey. Yeah, because it was Christian McCaffrey. So those were Mahomes has a chance to beat all of them,
Yeah.
other than Dak. So just go ahead. We can take a 2-for-1 special in the Super Bowl. Get Christian McCaffrey and Brock Purdy.
Oh
2-for-1 combo. I'll give you a drink and a cookie. How you want it?
And over the past, I think since week 15, he's number 7. He didn't drop that far off. Like, obviously, don't get me wrong, he's played like trash the past couple games. But
who?
I'm just saying,
Purdy?
Brock Purdy, not Purdy. But even though he's been playing like hot garbage, he's also been the reason that they've come back in games, though, too.
The reason that they got behind in games as well. So,
not this last game. He wasn't the reason for that. But he sure as hell was the reason.
Who else turned the ball over?
Well, okay. It wasn't just him, though. It was a factor of like players running the wrong routes. Well, he did have a couple overthrows. I'm not gonna lie, but
they couldn't get stops on defense either. Yeah,
exactly. It was literally like a hot knife going through butter whenever they handed the ball off to David Montgomery or Jahmyr Gibbs. So I can't put that. That's not Brock Purdy's fault. Like, what do you want him to play linebacker too? Like, come on. But I just think that it's unfair to say that he wouldn't be the reason if they did win the Super Bowl. Like, he wouldn't be the MVP or in the conversation for MVP in that scenario. But
I think the best situation
if they do win, it's
Christian McCaffrey win an MVP.
Yeah, but how often does a non-quarterback win the MVP?
When the quarterback is Mr. Irrelevant.
But again, the storyline though, like that's gonna be like the perfect storyline. Oh, he went from Mr. Irrelevant to relevant, and now he's the Super Bowl MVP. What are you gonna do now that you've won the Super Bowl, Brock Purdy? I'm going to Disneyland, and and then the confetti's falling down, and So I think that if you are to play the 49ers, one option might be to double up on either, I'd say, McCaffrey or on Purdy. I don't think that they're going to give it to Debo, even if he goes crazy or whatever. Because if he does go crazy, it's going to be because of Brock Purdy, and then the narrative is that, oh, Mr. Irrelevant, so they're going to give it to him. Because all of these awards and stuff are narrative based mostly too. So,
hey man, Debo could have like the trifecta, like 3 touchdowns. They could run and he could receive, and they could be like, hey, we're gonna try to fill that prop in like a non-quarterback touchdown pass, and Debo throwing something over to George Kittle or something like that. But yeah, I think that in the perfect world scenario, the 49ers would try to control possession, and Christian McCaffrey, as first of all, I don't know what Christian McCaffrey is. He's gained a lot of size, obviously, since he's come in the NFL. He's been in the league for 6-7 years now. Like, I don't understand. He's robotic. I don't care. I don't know what he is. A robot. He's bionic, because this man falls forward for 5 yards somehow, and he's not the biggest, and he never plays the playoff. Like, I don't understand.
Like, it literally doesn't even look like he's doing all that much, and then you look at the box score at the end of the game, and you're like, how did he have 20 carries and like 90 plus yards? Like,
exactly.
What? Because it looked like every run was, like 2-3 yards or whatever. And you check out the box score, 90 plus yards. What?
2 touchdowns. Like, I mean,
yeah, 2 touchdowns.
Just light work.
Yeah.
So we're not gonna get you on nothing definitive. I'm rolling with the Chiefs. Give me the points. I'll take it. Sure, you're gonna give me 2 points for Patrick Mahomes. I'll gladly take it. But yeah,
I can't go against Mahomes again. I've been hurt too many times. Really, only once. Usually I'm on the side of Kansas City, but it was just how popular of a bet it was to to take the Chiefs. I didn't want to be on that side, and the market dynamics. I got to stick to the system that got me where I am today. And so that means a loss, sure. But next time I know just to stay away as opposed to trying to make fetch happen.
Mm-hmm.
So all that to say,
we will film
I
next. We
am.
will film next season. So next week. So if you do want to
Mhm.
hold off on it, you can wait for more of your reports to come out. Everybody obviously has these injuries coming out. Kittle's dealing with something. Pacheco's obviously dealing with something. Debo's still with the shoulder and stuff. So we'll know more next week.
Yeah, the only thing that I'd be looking at right now is just the player props and trying to target those weaknesses for each team, as opposed to trying to, pick a winner on each side. Because your guess is as good as mine as to who's going to take advantage of the matchups best. But again, I do think that the 49ers pose the best chance to take advantage of the Chiefs' defensive weaknesses, I should say. But it's also, again, Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, Andy Reid, and now you can even add in Rashee Rice and Isaiah Pacheco.
Say a lot of
And
people
then
in the back.
also that secondary too. So I don't want to do that at all. What I might do instead is I might do a teaser between having the Chiefs up to 8 points. So getting that line up there, and then also taking the total up to 58. And so that way you get about minus 120 on those odds. Or sorry, did I say 58? I meant 54.
I'll say 58 is a
So
lot.
then you get yeah, 54. And then you get minus 120 on those odds. I'd much prefer to do that because I don't think that the 49ers are going to blow them out. I think if anything, it's going to be a low scoring game. 47 is what the total's at right now. That's a key number for when it comes to totals. But I also am scared because the 49ers sometimes just they just matador ole and just go on through, bro. Don't mind me. And so that's what scares me. So I'd much rather be at 54 as a total as
Yeah.
opposed to 47. So
Yeah. As I mentioned, the I'm understanding more and more about your, reasoning when you say that the 49ers can take more advantage of the Chiefs defense than vice versa, because obviously with Christian McCaffrey is going to be C-Mac. You're not going to can contain him, I guess, a little bit, but you ain't gonna stop him. But the way that the Bills were able to move the ball, not just from runs, as I mentioned, with screen passes and with a lot of stuff behind the line of scrimmage. And I feel like that's what the 49ers do specialize in a lot, especially if Debo's completely right. So that does concern me a little bit, but not enough to deter.
But if it's Mahomes as a dog.
Mahomes is a dog. What? Where we at now? 9-0, 10-0, or something like that. I don't know.
It's like 10-1 now or something crazy. So
It don't matter unless you.
yeah.
And last time I heard, Brock Purdy is not Tom Brady. That's all I know.
Oh my god.
So yeah, unless there's anything else you want, that's all I got. That's all I got.
Let me put on my tinfoil hat here. Just fits nice and snug there this time of year. So you're telling me that it's a coincidence that the Kansas City Chiefs are in the Super Bowl just conveniently after Taylor Swift started dating Travis Kelce, and that's when their offense started to surge, and now they're in the Super Bowl. I think that this could be the best marketing ploy that the NFL could have possibly asked for.
This is actually facts. Not only that, like I forgot, I've lost the stats now and everything, but the uptick in stats that Travis Kelce had in the games that Taylor was there and the games that he wasn't or she wasn't, and all that kind of stuff, and going off in the playoffs and she's been there. But it was reported that Taylor Swift has generated about $350 million in revenue for the NFL just based off of marketing appeal alone. So it's kind of crazy. It's been it's been weird, but I guess you could say it's been good. It's been, bringing together these Swifty fans. I don't want to get them mad because I heard they be hurting
Yeah,
people.
they come for people's throats, man.
Right, right. So it's brought music fans and Taylor Swift fans and football fans together and created some new football fans. So I mean, I'm all for it, but I don't want to watch every single time that the Chiefs make a big play or Travis does something positive and see a pan to Taylor and Brittany in the press box. So I don't know what they're
Dropping
going to do.
F-bombs left and
I,
right.
I watch that be a prop for the Super Bowl.
No,
It's like
you
how
already know
many
it
Taylor
is.
pans. And I'm like, I just want to know what the over under is. And they're like over under 9. I'm like 9. Like,
I'm
you know how
taking
much
the
people
over.
paid? They pay $1 million to get a 30-second ad commercial in the Super Bowl, and they're about to show
No,
probably Taylor Swift for like 5 minutes combined throughout the Super Bowl.
legit.
I'm like, bruh, like Usher's going to be performing, and they're probably just going to be panning to Taylor for no reason. It's like, oh my God.
For real.
So, yeah.
I think it's funny too that my girlfriend was like, "How does it make you feel knowing that Travis Kelce is the biggest star on the team?" And I'm like, Patrick Mahomes is the biggest star on the team. Like he's the best player. He's making $500 million. And she's like,
Mhm.
no, Travis
Yeah.
Kelce. Or apparently it's also his name is actually Travis Kels,
Yeah, it's
not Travis
Kels.
Kelce.
Mhm.
So we'll be referring to him as his alias, Travis Kelce.
I will be calling him Kelsey, but yeah, no, it is kind of crazy because it has been the talk. You hear about um Patrick's dad talking about they interviewed him before this last game, and they're like, "Are you going to be in the press box with Taylor Swift and Brittany Mahomes and all that kind of stuff?" And he was like, "I hope not." So I don't know if that was a shot or whatever, but I guess they did like a post interview or whatever, and he was like, "Oh, there was like no shade or anything like that," because he probably heard about them Swifties too. They're probably out here plotting as we speak. They're like, "How unfortunate it would be if Patrick didn't play with his dad for the Super Bowl." So
Bruh.
yeah, so
He just went missing randomly. I don't know.
right. What happened? So, but apparently Taylor has I don't know what the tour is. I think it's Eras Tour. Don't hurt
Oh,
me if I'm wrong and stuff like that. She has it in like Tokyo,
yeah.
Japan, and then she has to like fly 17 hours or something like that. So
Mhm.
I'm sure when you have just fuck you money that you could, she's gonna have all the private jets and planes in the world. So she's gonna get to the Super Bowl. I'm sure she'll be there.
Well, yeah, apparently. So not apparently. This is just fact. Japan
Mm-hmm.
is ahead of time
Mm-hmm.
compared to where Vegas is and us on the West Coast here, or on the
Mm-hmm.
Pacific time zone, if we want to call it. And so she'll have no problem making it
Yeah.
back here on time. Because you can go basically into the past if you're flying
Mm-hmm.
from Japan and end up being here. I think it was by like Saturday. If her tour's on Friday over there, and she'll be back by like afternoon or evening on Saturday. So she'll have plenty of time to figure her life out then, and recover for a day. But I guess jet lag doesn't really set in until like a
I
couple days
wouldn't put
after
it
that.
past
So
like a Swifty probably built her teleportation device, and she's just gonna instantaneously just be in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, one last thing is, what do you have as your heads or tails pick for the Super Bowl?
Tails,
Really?
tails.
Really? That's interesting.
I ain't gonna lie. I want to go heads, but I'm gonna say tails. I'm gonna say tails. How are you feeling?
I'm going with heads. I always go with heads. And it's actually cashed quite a few times over the past. Let me look up the exact numbers here. Super Bowl heads versus tails. And apparently,
It's eventually gonna refer to the mean, right?
oh yeah, I know.
Mm.
And which is why what was it? I didn't play it last year because I
Mm.
got lucky the year before and got it right. This is the only time I ever played it. I was like, oh, nice. Let's see here. So heads has won 27% or 27 times, 47%, and tails has won 30 times, 53%. The longest streak for heads has been 5 games.
Mm-hmm.
The longest streak for tails has been 4 times.
Mm-hmm.
And when it comes to the most tosses that have been won, the Cowboys have won 6 times. The 49ers have won 5 times. Dolphins won 4. Raiders 3. Patriots 3. And Seahawks 3 somehow.
Yeah.
And then let's see here. So from last year's Super Bowl, it goes tails, heads, heads, tails, heads, heads. So I'm thinking it does look like it's gonna go back to tails, honestly.
You're
Um,
giving me a headache because I'm just starting to think of like some of the guys. I feel like there are actually bettors in the sports world that are really micro analyzing the history of heads versus tails because they're about to drop 10 G's
dude, that's the
on a
craziest thing.
coin toss.
That's the craziest thing too, is that apparently, I think it was DraftKings. They said that the largest handle that they get for the Super Bowl is always on heads or tails.
Really, I thought it
Always.
was like national anthem
Yeah.
or something.
Mm-mm.
That's
Heads or
crazy.
tails, because some places you can't get down on the national anthem,
Yeah, don't
or
go to the
like
casino
the
with your
first
50-50
song.
split. Do heads versus tails. It's actually
Literally,
47-53.
exactly. So, it. So this is where it gets kind of dicey here. This is
Oh
the
boy.
last analytical thing we're gonna go into here. So we go heads, heads, and then it goes tails, and then it goes heads, heads, and then it goes tails again, which tells me if you go based on that pattern, it's going to be heads, right? However, however, as we know, it's 50-50 option. Either it is or it isn't heads or tails. And so it would go back to tails.
Has anybody
But
ever
I'm not sure.
analyzed like these refs like thumb size when it comes to like the coin rotation, making sure that the weather actually when it's
Said
below
checking the
45
centrifugal
degrees,
force of
yeah, like I don't know, anything to get an edge, Drew, anything get an advantage,
hey man,
1%,
you got to
2%,
look at
what I'm
those
saying?
things. It makes a difference,
Oh
man. You
boy.
got to take those things into consideration. Like which referees are more prone to flipping it at a higher revolution,
Yep.
allowing the coin to flip over at the right time and land on heads or land on tails. And so
I'm definitely gonna have a few player props that I'm gonna talk about next week because I'm not.
Mhm.
I tried to take a look at them earlier today, and I don't know if it was just because like it was like the first props that came out or they haven't adjusted or whatever like that. But some of the props look terrible. I'm like, oh, what is this? I didn't want anything to do with that. Sorry.
Yeah, that's the scary thing about props late in the season is that the sportsbooks have them dialed in so well with all of the data that they've collected throughout the whole season, and it's hard to find an edge. And the the worst thing that most people do is they overbet on the Super Bowl, or they make it like their largest wager of the year,
Mm.
and then they end up going broke, and then they have nothing else to to do the rest of the season, and they're just
It
sad
sounds like you're
because their
talking from
team lost.
experience,
And
Drew.
well, I mean, you got to learn somehow, right? So,
Hmm.
but also like that, I guess that's like a common thing though.
That makes sense.
Is that a lot of people are like, oh, it's a big game, so I'm just gonna put a lot on it and stuff, and then they end up you know either being super happy or being super sad.
Hmm.
Last year I was very happy. 2 years, 3 years before that, I was very sad. So, yeah.
How about this? Yeah. Yeah, so it'll be a great game, and Drew is in a roundabout way is rooting for the Chiefs. Anyway, moving on. That's basically all we got, unless there's anything else that you wanted to get into. Again, next week we're gonna get more into some of the coaching moves that we had in the NFL, some of the hiring. We've had a lot of head coach hirings, offensive coordinators, defensive coordinators. And yeah, I guess we could take a little glimpse into that, as well as have a better update for you when it comes to the NBA, as there's not too much has changed. Warriors lost the Lakers, even though the Lakers got mollywopped by the Rockets today. But with game of the year,
Yep.
regular season game of the year. That's all I got though.
And also, just a quick segment here because we always got to add it into the end of every show. Scoot
Mhm.
Henderson Appreciation Day.
Oh
So the
my
Blazers
god!
took on the 49ers, the 76ers, other numbers.
I told you, you should play
I
running back.
keep on, I keep on bringing it up with football. I don't know why.
Drew wants this man to change sports so bad. It's over, Scoot. Just go. Have you tried
But
tennis?
for real, he's tried everything. But yeah, so the Trailblazers took on the 76ers today and absolutely blew them out of the water, 130-104, as Joel Embiid is one step closer to not winning the MVP as he chooses to not play
Mm-hmm.
against the very scary and on fire Trailblazers. Scoot
Same thing with
Henderson led the
Halliburton.
way with 22 points there,
Mhm.
4 assists, only 2 turnovers. So he was wheeling and dealing, 75% from the 3-point range. He was just an animal. So, rookie of the
Juice,
year coming soon.
Juice said he led the way. He came off the bench. 22 points in 22 minutes is very impressive, but he also had 2 other teammates that were actually starters that scored more points than that. But
Don't look at that.
all
Don't
right.
don't look. He led the way. All right.
Yeah. 3
He's
of
the
4
leader of
from
that
3.
team.
Hey, that's a record
Hey,
right there. 75%. You don't get much better than that, Scoot. So shout out to you.
hmm
But that is basically all we have today. You said what?
I was gonna say, I'll be looking to fade them the next game. So
Yep. I'm sure he's climbing up in the Rookie of the Year race as we speak. He might be right in the middle sandwich between Chet and Victor. You never know. Don't count him
he's
out.
probably leading now. I don't know.
Oh boy. Well, that'll do it for today, y'all. Thank you for listening. This has been the Call Your Shot podcast. As always, if you enjoyed this podcast, make sure to give it a like. If you are watching on YouTube, make sure to give it a like, comment, thumbs up. You guys can go to our Instagram at CYS Pod, and that has the link to our YouTube as well as our sports pick. Anything else, Drew?
Nope, that's pretty much everything there. Just make sure you're liking, subscribing, all the fancy things that we like to say out here. And if you're liking it, give us a thumbs up wherever you are. Even if there's not an option to give a thumbs up, just do a verbal one or a digital one. Just send us a video with your thumb up to Alex, preferably, not to me.
Please don't. Please don't do that.
And that's pretty much all we got for you guys today.
We'll see y'all next week. There we go. 1